Hey, welcome everybody to episode 15 of the inplayLIVE podcast. Today we've welcomed back the Durges Bros just because it's been too long, I think 3 weeks since we last chatted with them. Anyways, a couple of great guys. Looking forward to having them on and grilling them a little bit more.
Awesome. So I think right off the bat, let's bring them in. What's going on, gentlemen?
Yeah, life's pretty good.
Welcome back. Welcome back. So Adam, I got a question for you right off the bat that I want to ask you.
Time out. Hang on. I have a signed contract by Andrew Pace right here that said I would not be asked questions by Yankees and Patriots fans today. You guys have already broke the contract. This is bullshit. We're flipping it. We're interviewing you. And I'm not taking no for an answer.
You're interviewing me.
Yeah.
Sounds great. I'd love to be interviewed by you guys. What do you got?
Right on, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for agreeing to do this. So to have a little fun at the beginning.
Right on.
Pacer and Ritzker, what we wanted to talk about today with you guys was just to give people more of an insight in how inplayLIVE works and how you guys work as people. Like, you know, your background, how you've grown over the past year. You know, I think the best part about what you guys do is that you've created an environment and a community where people can grow and learn and have like piles and piles of fun while they do it. So Ray and I would really like to dig in on that for sure today.
Cool. Awesome. We're ready.
Okay, question number one. You guys launched this thing in August last year?
Yeah, that's a bit of a story in and of itself, but yeah, go ahead.
So let's talk about that. How did you go from being a professional gambler all on your own to a couple hundred people in the IPL cult? Can I call it a cult?
We can call it a cult as long as we all laugh about it, right?
Right.
As long as you say it and smile after, then people won't think it's true.
Or a cult in the sense that if you leave, you're a loser.
Yeah.
You get ostracized.
Yeah, so I mean, like the launch of the business was crazy. So starting dating back to prior to the launch of the business, I kind of was in the place where I had more or less left my job completely, and I had made the decision of, you know, essentially turning what was a side income to me into my primary income. And for me, it was an experiment to find out if it could actually work. And the biggest difference in my success was actually not having a paycheck coming in on a somewhat consistent basis, because that kind of flipped the script for me personally, because it allowed me to take it seriously. It wasn't like, hey, you know what, I made an extra couple thousand for a vacation, or I made an extra couple thousand for a toy of some kind.
Right.
Or, you know, in some cases it was savings, but I think for me it was like, hey, if I don't succeed today, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay for my mortgage, that kind of thing, right? So I had just come off the tail end of over $150,000 of profit in a football season, and I actually met up with Mark Rodgman in Whistler, and he was talking to me about the e-learning space. And this was actually, I don't want to say it's pre-COVID, because COVID existed, but it wasn't really a factor in Vancouver, at least, where we're from. And I don't think it was a factor in Canada at the time. But he was talking to me about the e-learning space, and Mark Rodgman is a 30 under 30 award winner in Canada. Really successful talent acquisition company that he runs, and he was looking at taking his talent acquisition company into the e-learning space. And we just kind of had this aha moment where we said, why don't we do this for sports betting? And from that point forward, that was February 2020. From that point forward, we worked on launching the business. And of course, shortly after that, sports shut down.
Good timing.
Yeah, well, you know what's funny is, in hindsight, it's good timing. And in reality, we were like, are we doing this still?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because, like, sports were off, and we're like, what the hell's going on with the world? And then the flip side of that is, like, I don't have a job anymore, and I committed to being a professional sports bettor, and there was nothing to bet on. Thankfully, I had 6 figures in the bank from the season prior because part of my mentality with it was to not spend it. I spent like crazy, but I still kept most of my winnings. And yeah, it was a bit scary. So we just decided, you know what, let's keep working. Let's put this project together. And when sports come back, let's make sure that we're ready for the launch of sports. And when sports came back, we launched it as an e-learning platform, a course. So a lot of people don't know this. It was $500 to buy the course, $500 US to buy the course. I think we sold maybe 5 copies of the course, and it had nothing to do with live streams and nothing to do with a Facebook community. And Ritzker was one of the guys that bought it.
I had to watch 8 hours of one of my best friends talking bullshit that I've had to hear my whole life.
And he paid us.
You?
And he paid us for it.
You paid some friend.
He got a discount.
But it's like
He got a discount, but one of the biggest things was you know what, believe it or not, when we were designing the course, we kept using his name over and over again. Like, hey, this is our target guy. He likes betting on sports. He hasn't necessarily been successful with it. He does it recreationally, and no, but you do it. You do it for fun and entertainment.
If you were staring at a lab, I was the lab rat. You were watching. You're like,
no, hey, literally, like, and we literally all. There's 3 partners, Mark, Ian, and I. We literally said, what would it take for us to get Ritzker to buy this thing? And we offered him a discount, and sure enough, he bought it, and he became one of the first, I think he was the 3rd member, but the first 5 members. And it wasn't long. I remember I was on the golf course in Osoyoos because hockey was on in the summertime last year, and this is early August. It wasn't long where I started posting to the Facebook group, like, hey guys, I'm going to take this to, our 5 or 6 people that had bought our e-learning platform. And it was probably a week in where, like, me, Mark, Ian, and myself went, I think we're doing this all wrong. Like, this should be way cheaper. It should be a subscription. And it should be something that has ongoing value, as opposed to essentially what it was before was an online book. And we took that online book and we turned it into what it is today. And we don't know if the e-learning thing would have even worked or not. We didn't even give it the time to test it. And that's kind of how it was born. And that's sort of, the beast it's become today. And even when we launched back then, we didn't know that we were going to be doing live streams or anything like that. But essentially from that point forward, the community dictated the product. And the community is the product. The beauty of inplayLIVE, the masterclass is great. People's success stories are awesome. But the beauty of the product itself is the community, in my opinion, and actually has nothing to do with me at all.
It's really interesting. It's like Ray and I and Coulter and some of the other guys, we talk all the time about like how good COVID was to your business, because it was. Like once sports started again, you guys were the perfect cure for boredom, because not only were you like giving us something to do and learn and focus on, and a lot of us, like, this kept a lot of us sane, frankly, but you could also make money while you did it. Like, it was the perfect hobby through COVID. So, but I don't think any of us realized the stress that COVID would have put on your business at the start, because like what does a sports gambler do? Like, are you betting on COVID-friendly darts in in Scotland, or like, that's hilarious. That's really interesting.
I remember the first time I saw my friends. This is kind of when lockdown was starting to kind of end, and we met for an outdoor event, and we had some baseballs and some bats, and it took us about 3 or 4 pitches before all of us were betting with each other on strikes, hits on each next pitch. Because we hadn't made an online wager it had probably been 3 or 4 months at that point.
I think my wife was relieved when I had something to do, because it kept me out of her hair.
Yeah.
Beat it.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
Yeah, for sure.
So one day my water softener backed up and my basement was flooded, and I was like just thankful I had something to do. I was going through the basement and cleaning it out and filled up my dumpster.
Just putting holes in your garage just to fix them.
Well, that's really interesting. So, and so, like, that's one of the things that I really you know, like Pacer, you and I go back and forth. We give each other shots all the time, which I love. You know, it's just like any other friendship among guys. One of the things I really, really admire and appreciate about the way that you look at the world is you're a smart, confident guy who knows what, like, you know what you want to do. Usually guys that are like that have a hard time pivoting, right? Like they'll have their strategy and they'll stick to their strategy longer than they should. I've always admired the way you can do that in a game where you're watching. Like you'll have kind of your pregame outlook and you'll throw it out the window 5 minutes later if that makes sense. But it's really interesting that you took that same approach with your business. Like in the first, you know, the first inning of your business's existence, you completely flipped the script. It's really admirable. It's amazing.
I don't know if it was even the right call, but I'm super happy with where we are right now. So there's no way to know. There's no way to know what it would have been if we just had left it as, you know, I like to say this, an online book. It's essentially what it was going to be. So, and an expensive one at that, right?
The community itself is arguably the icing on the cake in this thing. It's the best part.
Mm-hmm.
Like anybody who's been in this group for any length of time has made a bunch of new friends through this. Like generally guys we've never met in person. There's been a lot of new friendships formed. We're all learning from each other. It's been a really, really cool experience. So talk about Ray. You throw one out there. What do you got?
Well, I'll just sort of pivot a little bit, but like we see it in sports, we see it in life. Everyone sort of has those times where you just can't lose. Like everything you do touches or turns to gold, and it's just win, win, win. And some of it's feel, some of it's making the right decision, some of it's a result of a process you've been following for a long time. But you always know when you're in the middle of that you're not gonna win everything forever, and there is going to be the peaks and valleys. So my question to you is, in gambling or in sports value wagering, how do you maximize that momentum and keep the streak alive? And on the flip side, when you start to see losses come, how do you snuff those out and put an end to it?
I think that's a really loaded question, because I put my tail between my legs a few times this year. And this year I'm referring to, like, you know, football season to now. I put my tail between my legs a few times. Ritzker's seen it live. The CeeDee Lamb touchdown this year was the most expensive wager I've ever put. You know, I lost $22,000 on that wager.
That one hurt me too.
I actually have a really interesting one. My Unibet account was at $30,000 2 weeks ago, and last week it got down to $6,000. And I actually have a crazy story that was associated with it. The Calgary Flames were playing the Toronto Maple Leafs 2 nights in a row. And I've never seen this before from a site glitch standpoint. The in-play menu was available for the Flames-Leafs game 1, up on the screen, on TV, and then on the screen on Unibet. And it had a market that didn't make sense from a value standpoint. Like, there's a difference between value and a glitch. And this was notably a glitch, right? And I just looked at it, and I'm like, okay, they've got this number wrong. Calgary's up, 2-0 here, and there's 2 minutes left in the game, and Calgary pays 4-1 to win in regulation. So I put $10,000 on it, right? And the game settled, and the wagers stayed open with the full cash out available of the amount I placed, not the winning amount. And I was like, well, I'm just going to leave these things, and maybe they'll correct them, and maybe I'll get paid, but I probably won't. But there's no harm in leaving them. And the next game started the next day, and for whatever reason, the glitch had, in the in-play menu from the night before, the pregame odds for the next game the next day.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, I look at my open bets, and I see $10,000 worth about $3,000 because Toronto is up on Calgary. So I contacted Unibet and said, hey, this is the story. And they're like, hey, you know what? You're actually just losing right now. and we're not going to give you the money. So anyways, I lost 10,000. That was a part of the slump that I ran on. That account's at 30,000 right now. So I got all that back. I think to answer your question, what I would say is I remember going on that first big loss run where I was really successful, and we're talking about 30,000 back to 5 or 30,000 back to 10. And it was the most sickening feeling. You can't sleep at night. You're shaking, waking up thinking that... I'm not thinking, oh, I got to get it back. That's not how I ever have thought. More so like, what have I done? Like, what have I just done? And now I'm at the point where I'm like, I'll get it back. I'm not going to get it back today. I'm not going to get it back tomorrow. But I know what I do works. And... from a momentum standpoint specifically, I guess what I'm saying is I am not perfect. I've gotten caught with my tail between my legs. I will continue to do that. What I try to do is take a step back and start over, but sometimes that even takes me too long to do. And in the case of 30,000 to 6,000, I didn't lower my unit sizes. I didn't, I kept taking big swings, and then I finally go, you know what? It's time to reset. And I think that's where... it's really the momentum the other way, not the positive way, that causes me to kind of do that. And yeah, like I said, it was 2 weeks ago. I've gotten it all back. Not to mention all the success I've had in other accounts on the side during that run, right? So in the grand scheme of things, I'm way up during that time frame. But even that one specific account that took that huge hit, it has gotten all of its value restored, and now it's ready to hopefully win even more, right? So...
I think I'll build off that. One thing that's notable in there that you hit on at the very end is that account was a part of your bankroll.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so one thing that we've talked about to its death, but that is the core principle behind winning long-term as an inplayLIVE member, is money management.
Yeah.
And so there will be times you go up, times you go down, and Razor, when you go through those bad slumps, yeah, to a starter, if I lose a couple grand, to me, that's a big deal because I'm only wagering $25, $50, whatever at a time, right? To Andrew, that's just part of his money management. His bankroll is larger, right? And so if you're starting out, just being really very aware of what the implications are towards your progress if you are scaling up too aggressively or taking too big of risks. Mm-hmm. And then, if you are going on a losing run, there's nothing wrong with scaling back. I've seen days where you've brought your unit size down 1/50th or 1/25th of a unit. Right?
Mostly on Saturdays.
Let's just really restart. And then you're not if it's part of your bankroll, you can jump back up. But if you're not at that level, then the way you scale, and we talked about this with Coulter, I think too, is you got to be really careful with how you scale your risk, because you can't just exponentially increase your wager sizes or what you're risking on the table as far as your bankroll goes, right? So, and that's just kind of one of those core philosophies, but. I think that's the best way to ride those out, is knowing that, have the confidence that in the long term you will win. And so if you have a losing streak, it's a setback, but it's more or less it'll just take you a little bit longer to get there. Not, I need to double down to get back.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So yeah, you lose a bit of time and energy that you've invested in that kind of growth, but you know what? You're going to have to just restart a little bit and then keep going.
You're not letting that number in the corner of the screen dictate how you're feeling and how you wager, right?
I would say no. The only thing is if it is going down, it really makes sure that the next one is. I think that is one of the biggest fundamental differences with someone who's successful versus someone who's not, is not letting that number dictate, how you react to value, yes, but more so than anything, what that depreciating number, that big dropping number does is causes people to chase and take something that they would never have done, and for an amount that they would never have done. That's the biggest difference. You're not going to see, all of a sudden a $10,000 wager come out of my account on something that is unrelated to our program. It's no, now I'm going to make sure that the next one has that much more value, and I'm where I'm basically I have to take this. That's the mentality that gets thrown at me. I can't not take this number. I have to take it.
As opposed to putting 100 on black, then 200 on black, then 400 on black, until you go broke, right? Yeah.
Do you see that on the other side too, you guys? As most of us, there's gonna be these ups and downs in our accounts, right? And I think everybody who's gambled with you or with anybody, they bet differently once they've lost some, but a lot of us bet differently once we've won some as well, and that's why a lot of us will give it back. You get cocky. You get a balance that's bigger, and then you're like, yeah, shit, sure, I'll throw $200 on that. Like where you wouldn't have if you were as prudent and careful as you would on the way up, right?
I do that all the time.
Yeah, like a 4-2 bet on the Sabres for $500.
I was just gonna say, there's a great story of a member who recommended we take the Sabres to win 4-2 last night. No, but you know what? That's a perfect example of something that I think is fun to take. I'm actually not opposed, Ray. I'm actually not opposed to what you just said. As long as in the grand scheme of things, as long as in the grand scheme of things, you have the confidence to know that you're going to be successful over the long term. And that could be, let's refer to sports betting over the long term as a month, you know, that I know that's not long term, but let's just say in the grand scheme of 1 month, if I was like, hey, you know what, I'm taking a pregame correct score in hockey one time, you know, and it's fun and you take a shot at it, and I go, you know what, I have no problem chucking that at the book, and in the grand scheme of this next month, that's going to be a blip on the radar. That kind of stuff, I would argue, actually helps the sustainability of your account and your overall wellness in things, because it does allow you to go, okay, I'm not going to do that again, right? So it totally depends on who you are as a person. If you look at that and you go, you know, there's actually a lot to this, and you know what, I'm going to start doing this more, and you know, this, that, and the other, and you know, you're noticing that over the course of 1 month, and then the next month, and the next month, things aren't working, you go, okay, well, you know, that's the whole point of tracking your success over time, because you go, you know what, this isn't working, right? But yeah, I do that stuff all the time. Like, sure, I'll throw something on that. I do that all the time. Yeah. I will say to that point, never in this have I taken out the love of the game. I love hockey. I love baseball. I love football, and I love basketball. I love those 4 sports so much that I don't think it would be possible for me to not wager on, but I could throw them on and watch them all day without any action in theory, right? And everything that we do at inplayLIVE, I shouldn't say everything that we do, but most of the stuff that we do at inplayLIVE is geared towards the love of the game. And sports betting is fun and it is entertaining, and I think there's a huge aspect to what you just said, like, hey, let's chuck some money on this. A golfer to win a freaking tournament. That's one of the funnest things you can wager on. And I have no problem doing that. I'll continue to do it, right?
Pacer, one of the things that I think the community, you know, obviously does for a lot of us, and I talk about it a lot, partly because I'm kind of obsessed with growth and learning. Like, that's my fuel. That's what fills my tank is anytime I can learn and grow, I'm going to be all over that. What have you learned from the inplayLIVE members? Like, as a professional gambler who, you know, like, I think one of the things that people who are new to this don't necessarily understand and appreciate is how it changes constantly, right? Like, there's this cat and mouse element of what we do with the books that is always going to be there, right? So a strategy that's there today might not be there tomorrow. This, you know, it's always changing and evolving. So the only way that you can find long-term success is if you change and evolve with the cat and mouse game. So, like, with that in mind, take someone like Kenny aside for a second, and we'll talk about him in a minute. But what have you learned from the members of inplayLIVE, and how has that impacted you as a gambler? And Risker, I'll ask you the same question.
Dude, there aren't even words that can be put into this answer that would, you know, really justify the answer it deserves. Because let's go back to what I said before. I created an online book. That's not for me. You know, hopefully the business succeeds for me, but that's for the people that are learning and reading it, and they're only learning from me. The difference from the community is that it only took a couple months for me to take my sports betting success, let's say, from a 7 out of 10 to almost a 9 now, I would say. And that hasn't been from me. That's been from the community. I've learned, and like, I would have never, ever even begun to fathom how much I relied on the community. And I think that speaks to Kenny. Forget about his strategies. Kenny is a guy who, like many people in our community, saw an ad on Facebook, right? And he clicked on it, and he took the approach. I'm not going to say how many times he clicked on it before he actually bought, but he took the approach of, hey, it's $59. At the time, it was $59 with the coupon code that he was given from the end of the webinar. At the time, he was like, hey, you know what? It's $59. If this thing sucks, $59 is a drop in a bucket. I'm a multi-100,000, per season sports value analyst, sports bettor guy. So, and he jumped in, and he's a professional doing all these things over here. There's so many different ways you can make money in the world of sports betting. He's doing all these things, and then all of a sudden he was exposed to all these things, and then of course the community exposed to both, and then that's just extrapolated more and more and more. Like, people have taken my curriculum and the philosophies of it and taught me things that I didn't know. Right? And like, I would have never freaking expected that starting this thing. And that's probably, again, you go back to the community. It's like, it is the best part. And it's constantly taking, but it's constantly giving, in the sense that every single day you don't know who that next member is that's going to come along and potentially change everything for all of us because of one thing, he or she spotted, right?
Well, I really appreciated you telling me that you were going to offer my wife a membership with a 5% discount the next time I'm out of town. Bastard. Really funny.
Adam told me that his wife was thinking, getting involved more and more, and I said, great, I'll sell her a membership so when you're out of town, she can still follow everything. Yeah, man, the community is like, it has completely changed the way I sports bet, in the sense that it's still the same philosophies and strategies, but we are all learning from each other. There's no exceptions to that. Kenny's learning like crazy, right?
The fact is, like, I'll steal a line from like Simon Sinek, but be the dumbest person in the room is kind of the mentality that I embrace, because like you said, I've been a rec bettor, I've been whatever, I've been kind of shadowing you for the last season and a half, like actually intently shadowing and learning, and I've learned so much just in that time from Pacer, but also the community has now brought in all these people with different experience, different walks of life, different communication. There's all that side of it as well. But then just one thing that we've talked about too is, with so much sports going on at one time in one session, having a bunch of eyeballs to do your work and have people scanning for opportunities at all times as a team, that is like unbelievable value, because you can't do everything at once, right? And so when there's 8 NFL games or 10 basketball games on at one time, and you've got a whole community of people looking at different things,
it's huge.
Holy cow, right? Yeah. Things come out of nowhere that you don't even, you're like, whoa, okay, awesome, that's great. And so you've got this like codependent group that's just driving each other, which to me is great. So
those second halves on NFL Sundays with Kenny are just awesome, when you've just got all these sharp eyes on these games and just celebration after celebration is so good.
And I think, like, the first thing, and I think we would all agree with this, the first thing that anybody needs to have in order to find success here is they need to understand the process and develop their own skill set on certain strategies. Agreed? Step one?
Yeah, like with reference to, I guess, our teachings.
The curriculum, yeah. Yeah, for sure. The next one I would argue is discipline, and I would put money management in this category, right? Like, you've got to have the discipline to stick with the strategies that work, and if you're going to deviate in a way that isn't going to kill you, right?
Yep.
You agree? Step two. Okay, the last one I would argue is the hardest to quantify, and that is the need for a winning mentality. There are a lot of people that are not capable of winning, like, for themselves, right? Like, there's just a lot of people that are just, either they don't think they're worthy of winning, they think that the amounts that they could win are too much for them, they get nervous. Like, there's a lot of people like that, and I've struggled with this personally when I start to raise my unit price. Like every time I raise my unit price, I go on a losing streak, and then it takes like a couple times to lower it and then get it back up until I finally feel comfortable with that new unit price. And I don't think I'm alone in that. Like, I think there's a lot of people that feel that way.
Yeah.
And this one is particularly for you, Pacer. Has there ever been a point of success that scared you away? Like, has there ever been a point where where you were winning so much money or your unit price was so high that you had that experience where it's like, oh, wait a sec, no, maybe this is too much or whatever. Like, have you had that experience?
No.
No ceiling.
No ceiling.
The ceiling, there is a ceiling. It's what they'll let me wager.
That's it.
I think my biggest increase in unit sizes is just the fact that I'll use 8 books at the same time, right? Like, it's normal for me to have $3,000 to $4,000 on one wager, but I've spread it across 8 books. Right? And that didn't used to be the case, right? I used to max it out on one book, and then I'd be like, no, I got it now. Whereas now it's like, okay, well, this works so well, I'm going to push it if it's the right opportunity, right? So, like as an example, we hit the Flyers last night at 9.5 to 1 to come back and beat Buffalo. Some of us didn't hit it. Some of us didn't hit it, but there was an example where I had, let's call it 1 unit, but only on 1 book. So I'll try to, a full unit for me is when I'll execute it on as many books as I can based on the circumstance. So I had 1 unit on 1 book on that. I didn't have, 8 units on 8 books, right? Despite that, you got to also understand in the grand scheme of things that 8 units is still under 2.5% of my total bankroll every single time. Usually it's closer to I would say 1 to 2%, somewhere in that range. But yeah, in that circumstance, I just didn't, and sometimes that's a comfort thing. And there's other strategies in hockey. Certainly in March Madness, you guys have been a huge part of the March Madness success, and a huge part of actually why we are doing what we're doing in March Madness has come from you guys and your sort of group. So that's one that I'm executing on 8 books and sometimes pressing twice, right? And it's been hugely successful, and that's why I was comfortable chucking $500 on the Sabres to win 4-2 yesterday at 40 to 1. I was like, hey, March Madness is still on, baby. Let's let it ride.
I love it.
That's a good segue for my next question, because I've had more success betting on college basketball, which I know nothing about, than anything else. Like my knowledge of players or teams or whatever, any variable you want, sometimes gets in the way of just following a formula and a strategy and executing it. And without giving away the strategy, like, I don't know one player in college basketball. Not
how
one.
many team names could you name? Like,
I know that guy from Loyola. I love that guy.
You already butchered it.
Hear that?
That
guy. I love that guy.
The guy with the hair.
And meanwhile, like, sports fanatics watching this are wanting to, like, they're like, these guys can't be successful. These guys are idiots, right?
But this is my point. You don't need to know. So like you said early on, like when I first started, about the less you know, and going into a game with a clean, straight slate and just using your eyes, following the game flow, and following the strategies. So,
yeah, I'll touch on that though, Ray. I'll touch on that. So the run, it's a running joke, but it's with a serious undertone, right? And it's the less you know, the better. And it's backwards. It's a total, like, oxymoron or whatever. It's totally backwards, right? I like to say that because of precisely what you just said, right? So a lot of what Kenny does, you don't need the game on, right? You don't. You need 8 books out, 4 books out,
that's right?
A lot of what we do that relates to the game itself can oftentimes be not related to the players, but very much related to the motivations.
Exactly.
So when I say the less you know, the better, it's a catch-22 because I'm referring to individual players' statistics and everything that the real diehard guys know. Like, you can tell me exactly what Josh Allen's contract is, and Josh Allen's the most popular player, maybe in the AFC, but definitely on Buffalo, right? So you look at it and you go, well, actually, I could tell you every Bill's salary, and I could tell you their positions. And I would tell you the less you know, the better to something like that. Because that actually just implies a whole freaking whackload of bias, right? And bias and emotion is the most expensive thing you can ever take to the betting arena. It's the most expensive thing you can ever take. And on the flip side to that, motivations for any sport are going to dictate your success. Now, unfortunately, this whole conversation doesn't translate as well as I would like it to into baseball, which is what's coming on Thursday. April 1st, we have the launch of the new MLB season, 162 games, ready to rock and roll. And in baseball, motivations are just like everything else. They are so unbelievably important, but it's such a statistics game that it really does help to know, you know, what Walker Buehler's doing on the hill and what Clayton Kershaw and Tony Snell are doing on the hill and, you know, how they're trending and all that kind of stuff. I think one of the biggest differences with us relating to the data versus, say, like a pregame handicapper that knows, like, these pregame handicappers are like, oh, do you know that, Price's ERA when it's this windy from this direction at this time of day is actually 2 points lower than, you know, the flip side if it was sunny? And I'm like, no. You know what I mean? So there's that level of data, and then there's what we're doing with baseball, which is very much more on a game-by-game basis that's supported by data less intense than that kind of stuff. So I think the mentality of the less you know, the better off you are is extremely impactful from a bias standpoint, but from a motivation standpoint and the rules of the game, right? Like, I'll have guys that I've watched football with for 10 years that have a bet, you know, for a favorite to cover a spread, and they're screaming because the team's kneeling out. And I'm like, you're an idiot. How do you not know that that's what they're doing now? Then why are they kneeling? Why are they kneeling? Because the game's over.
CeeDee Lamb could have kneeled. He didn't. He drove to our bank.
He could have
and
kneeled.
took our money, and then he sat on that.
CD could have kneeled. Yeah. But yeah. So does that kind of touch on that, Ray?
Yeah. And
I would echo that same thing. Actually, the whole college basketball experience has been, like, I think it has shaped the way I will look at gambling next year in a totally different way.
So the experience you guys have had with NCAA basketball is precisely the experience that I would have had about 7 years ago with NCAA football.
Right.
And you're like, oh my God, I'm actually making money sports betting, and no one told me how to do this. This is something I've noticed. And that's how the whole foundation of inplayLIVE was born, because of that moment that I had with NCAA football. And I didn't know anything about the players. And that turned into Saturdays are no longer a weekend. Saturdays are for NCAA football. And then that spilt over into NFL, and it went, oh my God, this does not work. This does not work. And then going, oh, but this does. And then, you know, your NCAA basketball, you might go, NCAA basketball is going to end in a couple days here. And you guys might go, okay, how can we do this in the NBA? And you go, oh, it doesn't work, right? And that is the process that was the journey that I was on. And I think that one of the best things, speaking back to the community, is that we've put those processes inside of like a freaking like hypervolt like time capsule where that's happening for the members in, you know, whether it's even a year, right? But in a year or a month instead of in 7 years, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's anybody humble enough to learn from the group and humble enough to know that, you know, they don't have to know everything to find success here. You just have to know some things and figure out how to be good at those things. It's really fun. We like the running joke in our group, because like Ray and I were finding success in college. Ray more so than I did, particularly early, but both of us did really well at it. And we were laughing at like some of the success we had. Like I remember there was a win we had on a North Texas game, and I was like, oh man, North Texas is my favorite team. And someone's like, you don't even know one player. You don't even know what they're called. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're called the Cockatoos. They're not. They're called Mean Green.
Oh
but
man,
from then on,
Mean Green.
We were like, go Cox. We want to go. We can do it. It was the running joke in our thing. Like you don't need to know that stuff. And in fact, in many cases, I think it actually is a detriment to your success. So now my goal is to be dumber on things like NFL so I can win. Because I've been smart about NFL for years and I've lost for decades. So maybe if I'm dumber on it, we can be more successful.
I see what you're saying, Adam, and I appreciate it. I'll caveat this, though. It is fundamentally important to understand the game and has Pace always says the motivations, but to understand how that game in that league works is a huge asterisk. So for people who are joining in, it's like you can't just get away with not doing any homework or not understanding anything about the game you're getting involved in.
Yeah.
I mean, you could try and just ride coattails, but then you're kind of just on the back seat with a blindfold on, right? But yeah, like it is important to understand the game itself and not to write that off because the players, the teams, who cares? But like how it works and what the things that are going to happen within that game are super important, especially when we're implying kind of that eyeball test sort of stuff, right?
Totally agree with you, Risker, and that's like I don't want it to sound like we just lucked into this thing. Like I can tell you that Ray and I did more work on NCAA basketball than we've ever done gambling on any sport ever before. But what we learned is the things that are successful are the things that you just talked about. Not the names of the players, not who's a senior, not who's a, like none of those things matter. It really doesn't. It's understanding the strategy, the motivation, what they're going to try to do in a certain situation, and then getting better odds than you should for the risk you're taking.
Right.
That's what it's about. I met a gambler. He's a buddy of mine. I met him at a golf tournament a few years ago. Amazing guy. He's up millions in Vegas, and all he plays is one-on-one high-stakes blackjack. That's how he does it. Up millions, and I asked him, like, what's the biggest difference between you and everybody else? And he goes, the biggest difference is when I go to Vegas, I've decided in advance this is how much I'm willing to win. Most people go to Vegas and they're saying this is how much I'm willing to lose. Like most people that go to Vegas are like, yeah, I'm willing to.
No, I heard you, man.
He goes and says this is how much I'm prepared to win.
That doesn't change the odds of the cards coming out in the game that you're playing.
No, it doesn't. But the guy's up millions and millions of dollars, and he's very good at playing, but he still goes in with like, this is how much I'm going to win today, and he comes away with wins.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the biggest things, I've read some and looked at some documentaries. Phil Ivey's story of Baccarat is a really, really awesome one. He got hosed, I think it was for like $24 million across 2 or 3 different casinos, but it was called card edging, and he had an edge on the books, and he had a professional card edger, which is how the card is cut and how that cut falls on, and falls on the card. And he negotiated with the casinos beforehand, this is the amount of money I'm going to bring in, this is the deck of cards that I require to be used, and they agreed to all those things to have the high profile of Phil Ivey gambling big at their tables, right? On the flip side to that, I've seen a very similar story where through the promos that the casino are offering you, and through the money that you bring into that casino, you can negotiate things like the dealer does not hit on my table on a soft 17. Things like that where a certain casino potentially off strip will say this is a high profile situation. It might cost us some money, but it's going to be a great story for us. We're going to agree to it. And they find little edges like that. In your story specifically, I've heard tons of stories like that, and usually they all point, and I don't want to point a finger at your friend, but typically they point to money laundering. They really do. And it's people...
Yeah, not the case with this guy, but yeah.
Sure, but like there's these stories of the greatest sports bettor of all time, right? And he's got $500,000 on each side of the game. And he placed one at MGM Grand, and he placed the other one at Caesars. They're right across the street from each other. And then the $500,000 that one goes viral, he took the 10-20% vig as a hit, as a cost of doing business, and cleaned his money out on the other side. And he drew huge attention to himself by doing this, and everyone thought he's the best sports bettor in the world. But to say that blackjack is that I have a winning mentality, I just look at that and I go, that doesn't change the odds. Statistics are statistics, right? So
yeah, I think
unless he has these kind of with his money where he has the edges, right?
So can I peel back the curtain on this a little bit, okay? If it's about a winning mentality, then what is it that he's doing to win consistently?
Yeah.
He obviously has a system he sticks to. He manages money. He does all these things fundamentally well that lead to that recipe, I think. And I think that's what I'm trying to dive into a little bit and say, like, okay, but I think it's all those things that you employ, all those skills and all those practices that you pass on to everyone else that drives that winning mentality and just believing in that process.
Well, yeah, and I think that is for sure one thing, is that you guys aren't here to lose at inplayLIVE. No one's here to lose. People do lose, but we're not here to lose. We're here to win.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you... The second part of the question, it didn't go how I thought it would.
Hey, dude, you brought up blackjack. It's statistics.
He teed up his ball, and then the wind just came and blew it off. He had to go back and put his ball in the tee again.
Do you want us to cut that part out, Adam?
No, you do whatever you want.
It's his interview.
It's a shitty answer to a great question. Anyway, I don't know. My follow-up question, which was also a good question, hopefully you don't fuck this one up, was you, this is your living. This is what you do for a living.
It's too good.
You can't edit it out now.
Yeah, it's too good. Go.
So my question is, do you set goals? Like, do you have monthly goals as a gambler? Do you have income goals? Like, how do you do that? Like, this being, that part is still a big part of your living, is what you earn as a gambler. So
yeah,
like anybody else who is in an eat what you kill role, like whether it's sales or whatever, they generally have goals.
Yeah.
Do you have goals?
Yeah. So I'm a big stretch goal guy, and I'm a big gap theory guy. So I like to have these far-fetched goals that are borderline unattainable, that I am reminded of every single day of my life.
Right.
Whether that's where I live, or what I live in, or where I'm gonna go, things like that are kind of how my brain. Everyone's different, are how my brain best works. And there might be a dollar amount in my head where I'm like, wow, if it would be really cool if I could do that this month or do this month. But I always kind of fall back to gap theory, which is, again, it's a contrarian way of thinking, right? Like Elon Musk is huge on this, right? He'll set a goal that's way too ambitious for his team. The whole team is actually pissed off at him for having set the goal. And rather than hit an attainable goal, that was here, he set them the bar here, and they landed here. And what the problem is almost every one of us is programmed to look at the area that we missed.
Right.
And I'm a huge gap theory guy. I look at what we accomplished every single time. And there's times like where I've woken up on a Monday after a Sunday where we just bet on CD Lamb. We keep bringing this up. And it's like, man, that hurt. I got some of it back yesterday, but I couldn't get all of it back. And then I just like open up all my accounts and like look at my spreadsheet, and I'm like, look at what you've accomplished this NFL season. Like, you lost that chunk yesterday, but it's a good learning lesson. It's a good opportunity. And look at what you have accomplished. How many people that do what you do can wake up and look at the success metrics that I have, and I go, this is amazing, right? So it's kind of that reset. And I some of those goals have been my family had never been to Hawaii in their entire, like my mom, they're approaching their 70s, right? I was able to take them to Hawaii, from my whole family to Hawaii last year in March, just before COVID hit. And like, that was a goal of mine. So more, I would say less like numeric goals and more so, big picture experience based kind of things is what I usually tend to look at, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
I had this vision a long time ago when it was a Saturday, and you're barking out bets on college football, and
barking.
We're all doing our own thing, and there was some dude, I don't know if he's still in the community, but he's like, I was just in between songs. I'm a karaoke DJ in Ireland, and I don't know. He just tells a story, and I just laughed. And I pictured the start of the inplayLIVE movie. So I'm going to write the start of the inplayLIVE movie for you, and then I want you to tell me how it ends. So so there you are. You're on your couch, and you're saying all these bets, and there's Buddy. He just finishes singing "Don't Stop Believing," and he comes back, and you're winning, and then it shows all these other people doing their whatever it is they do across the world, and you're helping them win, and you're helping them do good things and accomplish goals. So where are we now in the movie? Actually, who plays you? Let's start with that. Who plays you in the inplayLIVE movie?
Vince Vaughn.
But yeah, Vince Vaughn would be like be.
I think that'd
really
be pretty
good
right
one.
on point.
Vince Vaughn, like Vince Vaughn in his younger days for sure. I was gonna say like Jonah Hill.
He's too
Or
quiet.
What about Turtle? Turtle could play you.
Yeah.
Okay, who are the other main characters? Who are the other main characters in the In Play Live movie?
Desharm would be an evil villain.
It's hard to say, man. Like the core members, there's a lot of guys that I could shout out, but honestly, man, the community, you'd want everyone in it, dude. I don't want to discount anyone that's in the group by choosing other people. That
It'd be like the Entourage movie. There'd be a lot of cameos.
Yeah.
Just like one scene.
Yeah, there's Gronk, there's Russell Wilson, there's No, honestly, Ray, I think this is we do want to have like a Netflix documentary soon. Like this football season, we'd love to be able to put the wheels in motion for it. So that's not fictional, obviously, but in that scenario, right, there would be 5 or 6 members, maybe 10, but I would think about 5 or 6 members on top of myself and Kenny that would be followed in their path, where the film crews are on the other side of the live streams, following their stories and their success and our losses and our wins and everything, right? And we would want, who those 5 or 6 people are, we don't know specifically, but we definitely want a couple of the absolute best guys that don't need me at all anymore, right? And then a couple guys that were brand new, and then a couple guys that, have maybe experienced a few two toasters in the bathtub.
That's a super cool idea. Okay, so this might be a hard question, and that's a great idea, by the way. But where does the movie end?
Yeah, so if it's not a documentary, which would probably end at partway or at the end of the football season, I think that if a movie were to end like this, have everyone's seen Wolf of Wall Street, right? It's me drinking non-alcoholic beers with a thing around my ankle and me banging my head. I'm not fucking leaving, right? No, but honestly, like, the long-term vision for, how it ends, I think it's a world where you guys log on to inplayLIVE, and we've hired, I don't know if I want to say hundreds, but dozens of people from the membership pool. That's a total dream of mine, and that is how Kenny started, but, dozens of people from the membership pool that are passionate about this, and they have kind of changed their lives and been successful sports betting, that maybe now work with us in a different capacity. Maybe that's analytics of some kind, maybe that's software engineering, but as teachers, right? So, you guys log on to inplayLIVE, or a future member logs on to inplayLIVE, and it's our own platform, and they have the opportunity to go, hey, you know what, I have 3 different teachers on 3 different sports today. I'm going to choose tennis with, Mulva. I'm going to choose tennis. It's from Seinfeld. Mulva? I'm going to choose tennis with Boris today, versus, I have the option to bet on European football or soccer with Ibrahim, and you have the option of who you want to work with for that day, for a lack of a better term. And I'm never not a part of it, but maybe I'm actually on the beach in that scene instead of being. I don't want to, like, I love this business so much, but I also I'm not in a point right now where I have the ability to take a step back, Right. So I do take step backs, but I'm referring to, hey, what if I want to go away for 2 weeks, which is something I would do regularly. There would be there's a reliance from the community upon myself that would at some point in this film need to be released, which would allow for me to come in when I want, where I want, but then also be able to take a step back as well, right? And I think that the best companies in the world, and I'm definitely not naive to this, they hire people that are smarter than them, and they hire people that are better than them, and I think there already are people that are exponentially smarter and better than me at this in our community. So I think it's just a matter of time before that transition occurs. And I think one of the biggest things for me personally is that going forward, we would want to make sure that, and this is not tomorrow, this is, years down the road, but going forward, the energy is what isn't lifted from the group.
Yeah.
I just feel really fortunate to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, you've given it a chance to grow and succeed, Pacer. Like and it's a fine line. Like, you want to kind of keep control over this thing, but you have to give it enough freedom to evolve on its own as well. So, like I say, like, it's probably the thing I respect and admire about you the most is just the way that you're flexibly disciplined, if that's a thing. Like, it's really impressive. So, guys, this was a lot of fun, way more fun than you asking us questions, because I think we already told you everything we know in the last call. So this was great.
Are you glad in hindsight that I didn't answer the question the way you wanted me to?
Yeah, kind of. Like, he's into money laundering, you dumb shit. Jesus Christ.
His second answer.
He's money laundering.
Yeah, well, it's got to be money laundering. Yeah, that's what he's doing.
I think Pacer's second answer described what you wanted. You just wanted him to say you believed in winning. That's
That's sort of what I was going for. But
thanks for being on again, team. Love you guys, and hopefully we can do it again soon. And we'll see you tonight for the live stream and in the chat.
There you go. See you, boys. Thanks again.
Congrats on the March Madness success.
I think that everyone will appreciate the insights just from you and the candid. It's been a journey for you that people don't only get to see the tail end of, right? So,
right. Totally.
So that'll be cool. But moving forward, this week we've got a full slate. We've got NCAA, hockey, NBA, all in full swing. MLB is coming up, and then next week I'm really excited. We've got the Masters coming up. No Tiger, but it'll still be a ton of fun. So that should be cool. We've got some new stuff on the website for people to check out, right? So we've updated the links in the YouTube here. You can go and check out the new webinar and go through there, check it out, see what we're all about.
Yeah, so our webinar is just free training that's available to everyone, where we give away some of our secrets on live sports wagering success, so definitely worth checking out. Yeah. And you can join our quarterly subscription. We're running a quarterly promotion right now. You can get 56% off the monthly rate if you join quarterly and you enter the promo code Ritzker Podcast. Just click on the link below, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, absolutely.